If you're a human being with an internet connection, you probably know about Legos. Lego didn't always have the foothold that it does now. Lego has surpassed both Mattel and Hasbro in earnings per year, but that wasn't always the case, and Lego was almost on the brink of bankruptcy. What you can learn from the Lego story is how to make sure you stay intact with your vision. And today, I'm going to tell you the story of Lego, and I'm going to make sure that you learn from their mistakes before your business ends up in the same exact problem. The world of Lego is comprehensive. There are Lego seminars, workshops, events, and all kinds of sets that you can buy now. In my hand, if you're on YouTube and can see me, I'm holding what 16 hours has gotten me in a 3,500 piece build out of what's called a Lamborghini Cheyenne. It's a car that will no doubt look just like a miniature version of the Lamborghini $5 million Cheyenne that they have produced very few models of. What's interesting is that this Lego version that I have is modeled off the same engineering. There's struts, there's engine pistons, there's seats, there's a steering wheel that works, there's axles that spin. It's a very beautiful thing. It's taken me way too long. I still haven't finished it. But here's something I've learned. Lego started in 1932 in Denmark. The Dutch word Lego, I'm probably mispronouncing it, is Dutch for play well. And they started with these small wooden blocks that you could stack and play together. It grew and grew and grew, and distribution left Europe somewhere around the 1960s, expanded beyond the Denmark base, and quickly caught wind to kids and play companies across the world. I remember growing up with Legos. I built towers and structures and forts and all kinds of stuff. We had this giant tub of Legos growing up. In fact, I think my parents still have it. But Lego in the late 90s and the early 2000s started to get really wide. They had all the success and started to see invincibility in their future. Maybe this is something you can relate to. When you're on your high horse when it comes to business, when things are going really well, when things are cash flowing, and everything seems to be going your way, it's easy to get really wide. Start saying yes to a lot of things. Well, Lego started saying yes too much. And in no time at all, they launched over 13 new products in just a few years, which is a big deal for a company that requires intense manufacturing and production that has to be sold. They entered markets they didn't understand because they felt this conquering was inevitable. And that included things like video games. Many of you may have played some of the Lego video games. They had theme parks, they had clothing. It just got really wide, really fast. And in fact, in 2003 alone, 94% of Lego sets were brand new. So you can imagine as a business owner, how much pressure went into creating that. New and new and new. That meant design had to be constantly happening and new products and solving for issues and errors. There's a ton of challenge that comes with making everything new all the time. Maybe you've found yourself caught in this. I certainly have too. But they also, in getting spread really thin, forgot what they stood for. They initially Lego started as this idea of being imaginative and building your own adventure in a way. And what they started shifting to were like these pre-molded, like action toy parts. They got away from you build it, and they got more organized around we'll build it and you just follow the instructions. The designers had too much creative freedom. They could do whatever they wanted because there was this invincibility that they had with all their success. And because of that, there were no constraints, right? There were no boxes to keep everyone really tight. And it led to complexity and confusion within the organization. The core customer, right? Kids, parents, kind of lost sight of who they were building products for. And trust me, I've done that too. I've lost sight of what customers want. And I think gotten trapped in the box of like, no, it worked before, so it'll just work again because it's us. Not realizing that consumers are incredibly loyal to products, not as much to brands, especially when you forget about them. But numbers started to tank. And in 2003, Lego posted a $300 million loss. That's a lot of money. Their cash flow dried up. Banks were considering cutting them from what was going on, and even their Lego parks. I believe there are still a couple Lego parks. I know there's one in California outside of San Diego, but their parks were just hemorrhaging money. They were losing everything. And what ultimately started to happen to Lego, and I really hope this is not happening in your business, but you might be on the cusp of this happening in the future if you don't make change. They were losing their identity. They were losing what they stood for, what they were about, why they started, what forged them back in Denmark when they first began. They had to do something to change this. And they brought in a CEO about 2004. They needed someone to turn this around. So they brought in a new CEO. Now, the new CEO was not part of the family. It was the first non-family CEO. And I am positive I would butcher his name. His initials, his name is very Dutch. Jurgen de Nudstorp is how I think that would be said. But JVK are his initials. So we'll say JVK for the time being. So he asked a really bold question. He said, what if we stop trying to be everything? What if we stop trying to be everything? And here's what I think about. When I look at the Lego logo, everyone knows what that is. Everyone understands what that is. Most individuals, if I pointed them to this logo, and again, if you're not on YouTube, I encourage you to check out this video. We've got a lot of fun medium on the platform. There's also an image, if you are not watching, there's an image of like the original OG interlocking building cubes. But if I showed someone this logo, they would more than likely be able to tell me that they're building blocks, right? Very simply. It's got a worldwide appeal. He says, what if we stop trying to be everything? Essentially saying no. So he comes in and they have a radical refocus. They get dialed in. They cut the product line by 30%. They sold off theme parks. They reduced the number of suppliers and manufacturers by like half. And all of a sudden, things start to really get back to what Lego started with. This idea that we want to make play well, Lego. We want to design systems that allow people to play what's in their mind rather than them trying to express what's in ours. And they started to create new boundaries for what the brand was and what it wasn't. You know, he really reined in all the troops, got people aligned to a vision again. And in communicating that, they started to challenge the way that it had been done in the previous iteration. Most of what was happening was they were trying to like create these new identities, right? These like really fun combinations of like robots and things like that. But now they got into, well, let's just partner with brands like Marvel or Harry Potter that combine our set with their imagination, and things started to go well. The vision was largely about their operating system. It was largely about how could we as a company establish playing better to someone that's connected. And I think the hardest part in this story had to be cutting a lot of things that might have been exciting, right? It sounds like it's really easy to be like, okay, well, this guy came in and was like, hey, let's just cut things. And it was fine. But the reality is, if you're coming in as a CEO and you're chopping stuff, you are not going to be liked. We know this from every CEO story that's ever taken over a company. People don't respond well to change, especially radical change like that. What ultimately happened with the Lego vision is they got very good at a principle that you need to get good at. And that's saying no more than saying yes. Their vision became isolated and practiced and honed. And I'm going to draw that for you. If you're tuned in here, I'm going to draw it for you so that you can see what that looks like. Because out of the dozens and dozens and dozens, hundreds even of coaching calls that I've done with CEOs, business owners, leaders, the problem in most cases is too many yeses. In most cases, I would argue that 3/4 of the problems that CEOs face are because they've gotten too thin, maybe you have, and have said yes too frequently. They are way too wide. They are not focused. They are shiny object syndromed, aka they are not committed to what really matters. And they are in the same place that Lego was. Maybe they're not $300 million in loss at the end of the year, but they are still dealing with the same mechanical problems that they've gotten way too thin and the margins the profitability, the product doesn't line up anymore. Let's flash forward a little bit today, because I don't have enough time to cover everything that happened from 2004 to 2025. What is important to know, though, is that Lego made a tremendous turnaround. They got very clear on their yeses, very clear on their nos, and revenues jumped from $1.5 billion in 2004 to over $9 billion in 2023. That is a mega jump. That's growth on growth on growth on growth on growth. Now, is every company 20 years old? No. Maybe you've only been doing for a few years. Maybe you've just started a new company. Maybe you're celebrating your 5 years, your 10 years. Who knows? That's a long time. It's a long game and a long strategy. And two parts of this Lego comeback that are really important, certainly having a vision and making sure you stay intact to that. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but also playing the long game. And I think most CEOs are way too reactive to market conditions and the immediacy of their problem to actually have a strategy that lasts you 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. It takes adaptation, of course. And also, Lego was committed to this vision. Lego was committed to this strategy for a very long time, and it yielded huge. Again, their margins are way above normal. I think they're at like above 30%, which is one of the highest in the toy industry. And they crushed Mattel and Hasbro, like two other mega monolithic toy companies. Ultimately, they're still working on innovating. They're still working on this idea of like play systems and getting hyper fixed on what that looks like, with including new technology. But Lego didn't just find this like greatness through magical, fluffy inspiration and like tyrannical management. That's not what happened. They got clarity on what their vision was, and their vision told them what to cut. It told them what didn't belong anymore. It shared vividly what was a yes and what was a no. And it made it very obvious what needed to be changed, though I'm sure very difficult. This is what happens when a CEO leads with a vision. And that vision has to mean something. It has to come from a core of your value and your truth and what you believe in, not just a revenue number. It's one thing I get driven mad by is when people have a vision that leads with a revenue number. It isn't a revenue number. It's an idea. It's a framework of what the company stands for, how they make choices, and the criteria by which they make evaluative and decisive efforts to get somewhere they are not. It's important. And if we're going to talk about your vision, we need to be able to understand how to cast a vision and how a vision makes choices much simpler so that you're not caught in maybe land or making choices like Lego where you get way too wide. So I'm going to go to the board. If you're not tuned into YouTube, you're missing out. If you are only listening, I'm going to explain it as I go, but let's check out the board. So the way that we think of vision here is like a giant V. I know it's very, very creative, but here it is, right? A giant V, middle of the board, big V. If you think about vision as a V, what I want you to imagine is that everything inside of that V represents your vision. So that would be an automatic in, right? Or we could say yes. If we are clear and definitive on what our yeses are, then vision would also tell us what is out and what is a no. Follow that? If I'm clear on my vision and it's narrow and focused and aligned and definitive, I have a clear yes and I have a clear no. Lego started to get too wide. Well, what does that look like? What does that practically mean for a leader like you that has a vision but is considering too much? I'll show you. The V that we create, the V that we live in, starts to get really wide. If you're not watching on YouTube, what I'm doing is I'm drawing a really, really, really wide V, so wide that it's almost flat. And because it's almost flat, we now have these lines of distinction. We have inside the original V is an in. Outside the original V is an out. But now we're in this strange territory where what should be an out is actually inside of this really wide, way too considerate of things vision. And now what we have is what I like to call a false yes. This false yes is the problem and the killer for so many entrepreneurs. It's been the death of me. Certainly, I had a company that started in 2014. It was the death of that company later in 2023, really 2022. But that whole process also helped challenge and change the way that I now see what the problem was. I understand now that what happened is I got too wide with my vision. I thought that what we were going to do with financial education, I had a company called Money Club. What we were going to do with financial education was like this big ladder of experiential education from youth all the way to adult. And that was way too wide to be really good at youth education, which we were. The company was based on teaching kids and we were excellent at it. I would say that what we were building was first in class. We got crushed by some timing stuff with COVID because school shut down, but it was first in class. The problem was when we pivoted to working with adults, we weren't first in class. There were companies doing way better at that. And again, some of it related to COVID, but that process got us spread really thin. We were trying to do both. We were trying to recover and deal with what was happening in COVID, with schools shutting down and programs being canceled with an unknown end line. And then we were also trying to build adult education. And by doing both of those, I learned a very valuable lesson. That lesson certainly is transmuted in all the coaching that I do now. This false yes kills companies. It absolutely wrecks companies. It almost wrecked Lego. When you have a, I think this is a good idea kind of thought, but it doesn't fit in your vision, or your vision isn't clear enough to define the difference, you're in trouble. And the way you can tell that you're getting spread too thin, I'm going to tell you right now, is a very, very simple question. If you did not take on whatever is in front of you, maybe it's an investment, maybe it's an alternative product. If you did not take it on, would you still be great at what you did, at what you have been doing? Would you still be great at it? Lego forgot what they were great at, and they tried to do theme parks. If they canceled theme parks, would they still be great at building blocks and play systems? Yes. If they canceled video games, would they still be great at doing Lego blocks? Okay, cool. Rather than settle for this false yes, the mediocre yes, the average, we can do it. Stay where you're great. Stay where you're built. Stay where you built a reputation and you built an audience. This idea of vision also helps us define how to say no. And I think what I've learned, probably the hardest of ways, is that the reason we are so bad at saying no, the reason we are quote unquote opportunistic, I would say you're not opportunistic. You're just not committed to what really matters. Your vision isn't clear enough that you can commit to it. The reason we suck at saying no is because we're people pleasers. Because entrepreneurs have learned to play the game. What's the game? If you like it, you'll pay me. And when you start that game early, you almost forget to evolve out of it. That's not how it works at a high level. You can't please everybody, nor can you build your whole business based on what everyone else wants. You've got to niche down. Niching down is where the riches are. Riches are in the niches. That quote speaks to what this vision is for. And when you have this really dialed in V for vision, I know some of you are just listening. If you have that really dialed in vision, what you're able to do is give it to your team and they'll make the choices for you so that you don't have to be the people pleasing type. You can work on that on your own. I'll help you work through it if you're stuck. But you've got to be able to define your vision so well that it makes distinctions between what's a yes and what's a no. And if there's a gray area, I can tell you your business is probably going to explore it because that's how you are personality wise. You like to explore and adventure and try new things and take things on and find a passion and go fast. I get it. I'm talking to somebody just like me, but you've got to insulate the business from your own pursuits, your own like maniacal adventures. Otherwise, the ship is going to sink. In building out this vision where you have a clear in and a clear out, what you also will have is a clear connection to who. Because at the end of the day, a vision very much relies on who. Who do you serve? Who do you not serve? A big part of our work has been forcing CEOs to write out their vision. And here's a pattern that I notice. CEOs don't like writing out their vision. And here's my hypothesis as to why. And this might be why you're not writing out your vision. Because once you get it on paper, you then have accountability of the highest regard to what you just wrote. And if you're the problem, you're the one going out of bounds, you're the one causing chaos, you're the one micromanaging, now it's you. If you don't put it on paper, you don't have to deal with that. I want to encourage you to stop and pause, to take a deep breath and really think about how wide your business has gotten. Maybe the last 6 months has been fruitful, where you're hyper-focused and you're narrow and you're getting things done. Maybe it's not. More common is that you're not focused. You're not dialed in, and you haven't taken the time to write out what your vision is. Everything in our world goes on a 3-year horizon. I think 5 is too far. So on a 3-year horizon, what you should be thinking about and spending time doing, much like Lego eventually had to do, is, okay, what does it look like in a long-term strategy to get us where we want to go? Who do we serve? Who do we want to work with? What's our team look like? What decisions do we make? All these are prompts in part of our program. And all of this is designed to get you so clear that you can pass the vision to a person on the team and they can go execute it. That doesn't mean that everything's going to go flawlessly, or that, again, market conditions won't change. COVID certainly leveled me, and maybe it leveled many of you. But I think the hardship in this for most of us has very little to do with like sitting down and writing what we want. It's actually the commitment. And Lego had to make a tremendous commitment, just like you're going to have to make a tremendous commitment. So this will help you with your yeses and nos. Again, it will help you with your team offering their yeses and nos. There's another piece, though, that is important when you build a vision. What changed with Lego? So they brought in a new CEO. And when they brought in the new CEO, he had to go make change. But it's very hard to navigate change unless you have a vision. And if your business has been kind of like meandering through growth or having ups and downs, what you probably know is that it's easy to lead through change. It's actually hard to lead through vision and uncomfortable because, like Lego went through, there's going to be changes that need to occur that go against what has been done before. There's a principle that I love to live by, and I've said it a couple times, but it recently kind of peeked its head up again to remind me of some of my life lessons. And that is this: your values will cost you convenience. I believe that to a core. Your values will cost you convenience. So if it's something you believe in, it's going to be inconvenient, right? If you really want to be at your kid's soccer game, it might be inconvenient, but that's your values. If you really want to maintain your relationship with a friend, okay, it's going to be inconvenient. You got to go fly and see them. Fine. When we're building a vision, your vision will also cost you convenience. It will be sometimes inconvenient to hold to your vision because the line and the path of least resistance might be very different. When you have your vision dialed in and you can build walls and you can start to say, like, you know what, as we're approaching this wall, this is showing us where we don't want to go. This is showing us where we don't want to be, or the products that we don't want to keep anymore. We need to make some tough decisions. Those conversations are best driven by vision. They're best driven by a commitment before the conversation. Imagine going into a conversation with your business team and with a vision in place saying, hey, we need to evaluate whether or not we keep this service active. And to do that, I'd like us all to review our vision, talk about what we hear and see, and then compare that service to the vision and see if it aligns in 3 years. Imagine what a different dialogue that is. Because now it's not me versus you. It's not my opinion versus you. It's just a conversation about, like, hey, does this align with our vision? Let's take different opinions on that. But it's a totally different stance because vision sits above everyone. It's sort of like the vision's your CEO, right? Vision is your leader. And then the CEO's responsibility is to make sure that vision comes to life. But those tools in vision are incredibly important. You know, one of the things I go back to with this story of Lego and doing a little bit of research in it is that Lego would be missed if they didn't come around. But there are plenty of competitors, right? I'm like, everybody can, I don't want to say everybody. There are a lot of companies that could compete with Lego. They do. There's I'm sure like Roblox is one of them, but I'm sure there's even more than that. You can get knockoff brands and all that stuff. What does Lego actually stand for? Well, the brand connection, the brand commitment, and the vision of the brand is what people buy into. Again, I think customers are very loyal to brands when products consider them. But as soon as a product does not consider them, they're going to bounce, and they're going to bounce hard. So it's important that we not get mistaken with, what did we do? Because it's definitely going to be successful again. That just doesn't work anymore. Customers are way too wizened up to find alternatives and find them easily, especially with the way that we can get products from all across the world really fast. Lego's history of like doing incredibly well and getting wide is commonplace. And I find that being focused is a challenge for most CEOs that we've worked with. And we've worked with everything from like a 2-person shop to a Fortune 500 company with C-suite people. There's always a challenge being focused. What remains consistent is that vision is something that you can keep coming back to. We have an exercise that we have run probably 500 or 600 CEOs through, maybe more than that. And we call it developing focus. In this exercise, it's a really fun tool. If you'd like the tool, please just send me a message, jump on Instagram, DM me the word focus, and I'll get your email and send it to you. In this exercise, what we do is we redefine focus as directional efficiency. Directional efficiency is really important to most definitions of what focus is. For most of us, we think of focus and we're like, I need to just be one thing and one thing only. Like, dude, your life is complicated. My life is complicated. There's no way I got just one thing. So instead, if we say directionally efficient, now what I'm looking at is how do all of the things I'm doing go the same direction? If I'm going north, how does everything take me north? Well, think about a car. Car has 4 tires. If one of those tires is slightly misplaced, if it's, let's say, 45 degrees off, that's going to be a miserable ride. If you even ever make it, right? The axle's going to break. Something's going to go wrong. There's no way. That's a major problem if one of your 4 tires is taking you the wrong direction or is bent or broken. So focus then is about making sure all 4 tires are aligned and then all 4 of them are taking you the same way. Well, that idea of directional efficiency means that we as leaders need to evaluate all of the activities that we're doing to something. There has to be a way to evaluate progress. How do you know if you're winning in the game of business? Well, the only way you know if you're winning is if you have a destination. So I need my location and I need a destination in order to figure out whether I'm progressing or not. If I have my location and I move closer to my destination, I have progressed and I'm moving positively towards that. I think we can all agree to that. But if I start going the other direction or away from my destination, I can also measure, okay, I'm moving away from my destination. I'm going backwards. Progress requires an endpoint to be evaluated. And for many CEOs, if I ask them if they progress, the only way that they can say they progress is a revenue number. But that does not always work. And in many cases, it's insufficient to tell the story of the business. Vision is that destination. What Lego did is they rebuilt a destination. They said, this is our vision. And in communicating that out, we're going to have to make a lot of inconvenient cuts. We're going to have to say no. We're going to have to let some of these things go. We're going to have to get rid of these theme parks and all this shit. And in the process of that, they also became definitive in what progress looked like. They could measure differently. They could articulate decisions differently. They could argue differently, because without that vision, without that destination in mind, it's impossible to tell if you're getting better. Here's an example of that. If I said to you, hey, I'm really progressing at the gym, what would your next question be? I'll pause long enough for you to figure it out. You'd probably have to ask me, like, what's your goal? Right? You'd have to be like, Aaron, you're in shape. What's your goal, man? What are you working towards? That's the next natural question. I'm making a lot of progress towards my goal. Great. What's your goal? Like, it's almost funny to think about it that way, right? So if I said, hey, did your business progress this year? You would need to know your vision. You would need to know what it looks like. So you'd say, yeah, we had more revenue. No, that wasn't the question. Did you progress this year? What did you get better at this year? And how do you know that's progress? Well, you would need a vision, right? And I'm hammering that point home because Lego is a tremendous example of what happens when you lose sight of that. Revenue went down. CEOs felt pinched. Customers felt slighted. And the team got so creatively loose that they were no longer actually producing valuable things. That is what happens when you don't have a vision or your company loses it. We've talked about this with Starbucks recently. There's a podcast on that and the decay of Starbucks and their vision. We've talked about this in other instances about what vision looks like. And it might be time for you to sit down and look at your width, for you to really evaluate, am I too wide? Am I not connected to a vision that gives me the ability to say no quickly, to lead a team distinctly, or to articulate what we're trying to build to the right individuals that are coming on the team? And if you're struggling with that, look, I get it. I do. I understand it. It is overwhelming to try to figure out where do you start with vision, because there's not many tools to help you with this. I would love to share our framework with you. Send me a message. Tell me that you're stuck. Let me know where you're at. I'll send you one of our blueprints for building a vision. It's a 6-part process that will get you started. And I can tell you that building a vision, if you haven't done it before, if you've just gotten into business to make money, if you just built what was convenient, if you just hired and grew for the sake of growth without really knowing where you were going and reacting all the time to what's going on in the market, is building a vision is probably going to be really uncomfortable. You're not going to like it, and it will set you free so that you're not the operational do all things guy in your business. The business isn't being muscled by you. It's being driven by something bigger than you and that can exist without you. If your vision requires you to do all the execution, it's not a vision. It's just an ego board on the wall. It's just something that you put on the wall about all the shit that you want to buy, the car that you want to have, the house that you want to have. It's not a vision. Our framework will guide you to the vision for your company, what needs to be spelled out, decided, and articulated. It will also tell you what needs to be outlined for the rest of your personal life, your adventure, your lifestyle, your health, so that you're building a holistic vision. And in that process, you will have to muscle up and get uncomfortable with the fact that you might not have had a vision to begin with. You might be way too wide, and you might be on the brink, whether you say it or not, whether you pronounce it with your friends or you hide it from your spouse. You're probably on the brink of going insane in the first place. Because I think the breaking point for me happened when I tried to hold up this image of everything's good. Everything is fine. It's totally fine. I got it. I'm going to bind it all back together. Meanwhile, everything was getting wider and wider and wider. I wasn't saying no. The company was getting splintered. And the whole time I was doubting myself and doubting whether I had what it took to take it to the next level. I did. I doubted everything about me. In that moment, in that place, in that darkness, that's where I found the love for what I'm doing today. And I can reassure you that if you do the work on vision, you can navigate out of that fog. You can find your way beyond the darkness to where you have a clear vision. You can communicate, you can recruit great talent, you can grow your revenue, you can make better offers. Everything in that space changes. But you've got to build vision. Lego, 1932, almost 100 years old, almost didn't make it past their prime because their prime brought on a hubris that got them too wide. You are not that special. I hate to break it to you. If Lego can go through this, your construction company can go through it. Your real estate brokerage can go through it. Your tech SaaS company can go through it. You are not immune to this problem. So I'd encourage you, jump in, send me a message if you want to learn about our focus exercise or you want our vision blueprint. Send me a note. I'll send it to you. I don't want anything for it. Just work on your vision so you don't end up like Lego. There's a lot to be learned from their almost demise. And we, as CEOs, need to make better commitments to working on our vision regularly, just like we work on our P&L, we work on our finances, we work on hiring, we work on our mindset. You've also got to work on your vision. If you want the tools, reach out. Otherwise, take a moment, jump on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, leave me a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. I would love to know your comments about an episode like this. And last but not least, give me a little love if you're building Legos, because I want to know what you're building. So send me a picture, send me a note of what you're building with Legos. I'm going to work on my Lamborghini Cheyenne this weekend, maybe. I'll try to finish this thing up, and then you guys will eventually see this in the corner of my studio. This thing is sweet. I'm a big Lego fan, but I had no idea about their history. We always think every company like this is just killing it. They almost didn't make it, which means I would not have this car. So if you're a fan, send me a note. Let me know what you're building. Otherwise, I will see you on the next one. Like and subscribe to everything that we've got going on. And let's build you a living vision that gets everybody else behind you in line, where you could say no, you could say yes, and bring your vision to life. See you on the next one.